Harley was a young lab mix with an unknown background when she came into Pope Memorial Humane Society in August of 2019. She seemed friendly, if a bit sensitive about her neck, and was terrific with other dogs. This was obvious when Dogs Playing for Life came to train staff and volunteers on how to run dog playgroups. She was a superstar, bringing shy dogs out of their shell, playing rough with the big guys, gentler with the ones who needed it. Staff and volunteers grew to love her. Harley tried a few homes. Unfortunately, she showed aggression in the house. The staff was unable to find the cause or figure out how to address it. A behaviorist came and made some suggestions, but they did not solve the problem. Harley could not be adopted out again since the reason for her behavior and the solution could not be found. Harley was in a pickle. Fortunately, Dogs Playing for Life was willing to help. Dog walking volunteers and donors gave the $1,120 fee to send her to Florida and give Harley her second chance. Day 1 of the road trip with Harley the dog and volunteer Paul Nagel. 7:30 a.m. Met at Pope Memorial Humane Society to get Harley. Kearney Nagel and Jen Woodward came to take photos and say goodbye to Harley. Staff gave Paul supplies and paperwork. Jen walked Harley around the building one last time. Harley was loaded in the back seat of the Suburban, where she had lots of blankets and towels to lie down on. It looked very comfy. Everyone said goodbye and cried. The doors were closed, and away they drove at 8 a.m. Paul and his co-pilot Harley off on a big adventure. Harley had been on 3 or 4 practice drives with Paul in the past weeks, so she might have thought they were going to the post office again, or to get gas, or to the bank. She sat up and looked around all the way to Waldoboro. At this point, she realized this was not going to be a short drive like before. The first day was an 11-hour on-the-road drive that included rest stops and fuel stops. Kearney had made Paul 8 peanut butter sandwiches, chips, and water, so he did not have to stop for food. Paul was in his COVID bubble in his car. He had many masks and gloves and everything else he might need. Harley had a bowl of water on the floor, on a towel where she could get a drink anytime she wanted. Paul also had a case of canned food and several bags of dry food for Harley. Every rest stop, he would give her a really nice walk and then offer her food and water. Harley was very well behaved in and out of the car. She did everything Paul asked of her. She loved the smells of the rest stops. One rest stop, she grabbed a piece of bread on the grass. Paul said no, and she immediately spit it out and looked at him with big eyes as if to say, "I'm sorry." When he put her in the car so he could go to the restroom, she always wanted to go with him. She must have thought, wherever you go, I'm going too. She did stay in the car, and when Paul got back to the car, she was always sitting in the driver's seat. She was a good girl, and Paul spoke with her all the time driving, telling her where they were and that she was a good dog and that many people cared for her. They arrived at the hotel in Jessup, Maryland at 7 p.m. Paul checked in and brought Harley to the room. She loved the bed, rolling on her back and thoroughly enjoying it. Paul set up her water and food and blankets and then took her for a nice long walk. They watched some TV, then went to bed. The room had 2 beds, but Harley insisted on sleeping snuggled up next to Paul. Day 2 of the big adventure. Harley wakes up at 4 a.m. and licks Paul's face. He tells her it's too early and to go back to bed. She does, until 6:30 a.m. when she does her potty dance. Paul knew it, threw on his jeans, and took her for a nice morning walk. They packed up, Harley had her breakfast, and they were on the road again. Harley was happy to be back in the car and on the road. She didn't know where they were going, but she was going anywhere with Paul. Day 2 was a 10-hour drive from Maryland to Savannah, Georgia. Harley rested and looked out the windows and watched the cars and trucks go by. Again, they did rest stops, potty stops, and fuel stops. The pair got to the hotel at 6 p.m. and went through the same routine. When she got to the room, she was giddy happy and just wanted to play with Paul. But she loved the bed. There was only one king bed, and Harley, the dog, happily snuggled with Paul all night long. Day 3 of the big adventure. Again, Harley woke up early and remembered Paul was there with her. She licked his face and went back to sleep. She did the potty dance at 6:45 a.m., and they went out for a nice morning walk together. Back in the room, she had her breakfast and water while Paul had coffee. He hugged her and told her today was the big day. She would arrive at Dogs Playing for Life and that everyone was pulling for her. They loaded up in the car and left shortly after 8 a.m. They only had a 4-hour drive, including stops. They arrived at the Dogs Playing for Life Center around 12:20 p.m. and were met by the director, Lexi. She greeted Harley and Paul and chatted. Unfortunately, there would be no tour due to COVID. but Lexi pointed out all the facilities on site and pointed to Harley's enclosure. Lexi kindly took some photos of Harley and Paul. She had them go in a large fenced-in yard where Harley would stay for a short while. Lexi then gave Paul time to say goodbye to Harley. Harley gave him hugs, she licked his face, and he kissed her and gave her a big hug. Paul told her to be good in school. He told her, all of us at Pope Memorial Humane Society loved her, we will miss her, and that we are rooting for her. Lexi returned and Paul had to head out. Harley, of course, wanted to go with him. They were road trip buddies. Paul left all the dog food with Lexi and also left Harley's blankets from Pope Memorial Humane Society that she slept on in the car and the hotel beds. Paul then got in his car and started driving. He cried because he was sad leaving her, but he also cried because he was glad she had this fabulous chance. That same day, Friday, Paul drove north to Florence, South Carolina to stay overnight in a hotel. The next day, Saturday, he drove to Mount Holly, New Jersey for the night. The last day, Sunday, Paul drove home, arriving at 4 p.m. Those were long and lonely drives, and he missed having her to talk to. In Paul's own words, I miss Harley. I am still sad, but I am so very glad that she was accepted into this program. I can't wait to get or see the updates and videos. Thank you everyone that was involved to make this happen, as well as those that generously donated on Harley's behalf. Paul Nagel.